For those of you guys that don't know me, I'm going to do a quick introduction. My name is Sharon Weaver. I am the organizer for the Kansas City Office 365 user group for SharePoint Saturday, Kansas City. I'm also a Microsoft Regional Director and MCT. I own Smarter Consulting. We do IT consulting primarily around Microsoft technologies. I've been in the biz for a while. I've been doing this for my whole career, so well over 20 years. My information's on here if you guys want to reach out to me, if you have any questions, if you want to follow me. I think this year I feel like things are normalizing at least a little bit, even in the virtual space, and I'm starting to kind of get a grasp on kind of what's going on. So hopefully we'll start getting some more virtual events lined up for the rest of this year so we can keep everything moving forward. If you need any help, there's a bit.ly there, and there's also a QR code. So that just takes you to a form. If you need any help, you can fill out the contact us form and we'll follow up with you and help you with whatever you need. I do have this links slide, and I'm going to post it up here for just a second, and then I will send it out at the end as well. Mostly because I'm going to give you kind of a demo walkthrough overview. I'm not going to do a PowerPoint presentation for you because this is so new that I think it's a little bit better for you just to kind of get to see a little bit of what's going on, and then later on we can talk about it. But I do have some really important links in here that I kind of wanted to call out, and then I'll make sure you get these afterwards. But if you just go to the AKAMS SharePoint Syntex link, it gives you more information about SharePoint Syntex at a product level. And if you scroll down to the purchase options, that is how you can get to the trial. And I'll show you where that is in just a minute. But this is the link you want to be able to learn more about it and get the trial, which is really the important part. I've also got a couple links in here for setting it up, for a few people that have already started putting out a few walkthrough things. There's also a link for Project Cortex, which SharePoint Syntex is part of Project Cortex. This is one of the confusing things where people kind of are like, well, what's the difference? Is SharePoint Syntex, is it Project Cortex, or is it a little bit different? Project Cortex is kind of like the holistic project, and then SharePoint Syntex is one component of that. So if you want to learn more about Project Cortex, you can go to that link. You can sign up for information. There's community calls that have been posted out there. You can kind of keep up with the team on what's going on with that. The other thing that I've got here is I've actually partnered with Joel Olison, and we're going to be doing some ongoing workshops around SharePoint Syntex in the future. And so basically we're starting to get level of interest for that so we can get our dates confirmed. So if anybody is interested in signing up to be on the list, basically to get information about when those dates are finalized, so you guys kind of get the inside scoop. If you just go to that bit.ly with Syntex Workshop at the end, make sure you have capital S and capital W, because on bit.ly the case matters. There's just a real short form, and if you're interested in getting information about those workshops that are going to be coming up, then I will be happy to send that information to you. They will be paid workshops. They will probably be either half day or full day. We did one half-day workshop in December. It went really well. It was full. Everybody really enjoyed it. And so we had a lot of people reaching out and asking us to do it again, enough people that there will probably be multiple dates. So I just wanted to offer this to you guys in case you were interested, so you can fill out that if you want to get more information. All right, that's all of my PowerPoint slides. So I'll send that out at the end. So I wanted to walk through what SharePoint Syntex is and kind of how it works, and just give you a really kind of high level overview about this. Obviously, in less than an hour, I cannot train you completely on all the different things SharePoint Syntex can do, but I can kind of give you a little bit of an appetizer to show you what it's doing and kind of where it's at. There is a full trial out there that's available now, like I mentioned. So if you'd like to look at that, all you have to do is go to the AKAMS SharePoint Syntex. You'll come to this page. It gives you a little bit of information about what it is. So it talks about content understanding, what's happening with that, content processing, content compliance. If you continue to scroll to the bottom, there's this See Plans and Pricing. This is the link that you want to click. And when you do that, now you can see that this is actually a current license. So it's already in general availability at $5 a user per month to add to your existing tenant. But the most important part is here's the free trial button. If you do the free trial, you will get this. And I'm already signed up, so you'll see that I've already got this in here. But once you click on that, it will set it up and it will give you 25 free users to go ahead and test it out and see if it's something you like. I did this on my own tenant just to set it up and make sure everything worked, and played around with it a little bit. And now I just do it in my demo tenants. You can use it on a CDX tenant if you've got that. You can use it on any business tenant. You cannot use it on the development tenant. So if you have a development environment set up through the developer program, it will not work on that. I'm just giving you the heads up. So you'll have to do it on a live tenant. Even if it only has one user, that's fine, but you just can't do it on the dev tenants. So I'm going to kind of give you a quick overview of kind of how this works. What's happened is there's a section in here called Content Understanding that has been added to the M365 stack. And what's happening is the SharePoint Syntex piece basically loads a module into the admin center that allows you to manage the content understanding across the content inside of SharePoint. You can see there's a little bit of information out here. I've already set this feature up, and if I wanted to manage it, I could go in here and I can actually manage what I've got. I can edit the content center I set up. I can get the address for it. One of the most frequent questions I get is, can we have multiple content centers? And yes, you can. You can have multiple content centers. I just set up one to kind of show you what it looks like. So this is all managed in the admin center to get it set up. When you create it, it creates a SharePoint site collection. That's a templated site collection that has all the right parts and pieces installed. And so you can see it's right here in my SharePoint sites. I have nothing else in here. I set it up just for this demo, so you can see I have the SharePoint site here, and I just called it Content Center. When I click on this, what's really nice is because this is new, you can see that there's some built-in help. So it's not just going to dump you in with no information. So a few tips and tricks is when you first create that first content center, you can go through the tour of how to create a model. So I'm going to click on that just so you can see what that looks like. And what will happen is it will walk you through what the steps are to create your first model. So if you forget, because obviously, you know, this is just an overview of what it can do. This is a nice reminder of kind of here's the steps that need to happen. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to add files that the model is going to learn from. You're going to create classifiers that will help to understand. It basically helps to train the model on what is it that we're doing and why are we doing it. So the how of how to make that model work. And then when we're done with that, we're going to train the model to understand the exact things that we want to get out of it. So we're going to give it example files. We're going to tell it what we're looking for and where we're looking for it. And then we're going to say, okay, now based on that information, here's what we want to get out of it. And then once we get that information out of the model, we can then apply that to libraries so that going forward, anything we put into that library that follows that exact model will continue to be able to get that information. All right, so it just kind of walks you through that little tour. You can look at that as much as you want. The second tip is when you first create your first content center, to be able to get the sample content, if you click on this models link first, there's a little window that pops up that says download sample content. So when you click on models, make sure to click on or import. I think it says import sample content. Make sure you click on that button first for the first time you're doing this so that you can play with it. It'll give you some sample content so you can practice a little bit. And it creates this benefit change notice classifier. All right, so I'm just giving you guys some tips and tricks to play with it yourself because I'm sure you're going to want to get that trial out. And that's why we're doing these workshops, is because there's a lot more to this than just the basics. And so we're trying to kind of help people learn this stuff and how to do it. But I wanted to give you guys at least that so you kind of understand what's happening. I see a question. Is the license cost just for those who will interact with the contents and are like adding files to the train system? Yes, correct. So Amber asked if the licensing is just about the people who are going to be interacting with it. Yes, it's for the people who will be adding it and setting it up. Because after that, you can apply that model to any library inside of SharePoint. So I'm just going to walk you guys really simply through creating a model. I'm going to show you kind of what that looks like. I'm going to show you what it's capable of, how it works, and let you ask some questions. And that way you can kind of see how this all kind of comes together. So you can see in this content center that I have a button you don't normally have in SharePoint. So we have our normal SharePoint library, but I have this extra create a model button. And so essentially what I want to know is, okay, what is it that I'm doing with this model? What type of information am I getting out of that? Get to where I'm at. And then one of the things you're going to notice when we create this is that it has this option to create new content or use an existing content type. So for those of you that understand content types, what the model is doing is it's creating a content type to be able to classify that information in addition to some of the other stuff it does. So if you are knowledgeable about content types, you can actually set up a content type and then you can use that content type for more than one model if you'd like. So I'm going to set this up, and maybe, for example, I want to look at benefits. So I'm going to get benefits information, or maybe I'm going to get invoice information, or maybe I'm going to get SOW information. Depends on what you want to pull out of this. I'm just going to put benefits for fun. And then, so remember that tour we walked through, it's now going to say, okay, here's the things that you need to do to train the model so that it can do what you want it to do. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add some sample files. And this is where I've got that import sample file so I can see what's happening. And what it's going to want to know is, I want some files that are going to be what it is you're looking for, and then I want you to give me a file that's not what you're looking for so I know what's going on. So I'm going to pick, because we're focused on benefits, I'm going to pick 5 of these HR documents, and because I need to have something to tell it that it's not, I'm going to pick one of these SOW documents because I know that that's not going to be what we're looking for. All right. And it's going to load those into this files for training area. Once we have files in there, we can now classify the files and create the model to train them. So what it's going to ask us is this an example, yes or no? And all you have to do is say yes. These are all benefits documents. But once we get to the SOW, this is not a benefits document, so we're going to say no. All right. And then up here, it's going to tell you, you're going to see these bars up here at the top. It's going to say, okay, you've done what you're supposed to. Great. Thank you very much. And then now there's a new menu that we have right here. We've labeled what they are. And what we want to do is we want to train them to do what we want them to do. It's going to explain everything as you walk through it. So what is it that we're training it to do? And maybe we want to get a specific piece of information. We want to know who is getting this information. So we're going to grab this, or we could grab a date, right? So there's different pieces of information in here that we want to get. And maybe we're going to say we're going to get who is it to begin with. So we want to get whoever the employee is. All right. So we can choose one from blank. We can choose one from a template. If it's something specific that already has kind of a generic pattern that goes with it, you can use a template. So for example, if we wanted to get a date out of this, see how these all have different dates? We could use the date template. If we just want to simply create a blank one, we can. And maybe we want to get the name of the person who's getting it. And then we would decide how to get that information. So maybe it's a pattern that matches, maybe it's words or phrases that we're looking for. In this case, it seems like there's a deer in front of everything. So we think that that's probably pretty easy. And so we want to get this name here, and we're going to tell it how to get there. All right. So we're going to pick what that is, and then we're going to train it on that. If I try to train it without an explanation, it's going to say, nope, you have to have an active explanation to train the model. The really nice thing is before we train this, I can go back into my label and I can say, not only is it this type of document, but I also want to get this piece of information out of it. And so this is what we're looking for. All right, so let's go ahead and try this. We want to get the name. We're going to say it's a word or phrase. And it's going to be after this deer. Oops. After, whoops. Hang on. It's only because I'm doing a demo that it's not working with me. All right. There you go. All right. Let me go. I'm going to do that again because it kind of got wonky on me while I was doing it. Go back. Yeah, thanks for matching everything. That was super helpful. Oh, sorry. It's because I'm on the wrong screen. I'm giving you guys a demo. This is training the model for the document. I'm ahead of myself. Benefits. This is a benefit document. I'm getting ahead of myself. That's why. All right. Hang on, I might have to redo this. I created a brand new environment and it does not want to work with me. Hang on, I'm going to pull up in my other environment where I've already got it set up. And I've done it like a million times. This is why I did a backup one. All right. So here's where I've got my benefits. Let's pull this up again. Got our classifiers set up in here. Okay. I don't know why that one doesn't want to work with me. So you can see, for example, I know that this is a benefits document because it contains the phrase benefit change notice inside of it. Maybe I'm looking for specific pieces of information. When I go to train that model, it's going to take all of those explanations. It's going to hold them against the test, and then we're going to be able to look for those in these particular documents. Go back. There we go. And then when we go to test it, you can test those documents to make sure that they match up with what you put into the explanations. So let me close this one out and go back in and see if it's going to play with us. All right, let's try that again. All right, so we put our stuff in there. We've trained our classifier. And now I think it might work. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to know what information do we want to get out of it. We can have it, we can set up whatever extractor we want, and when we do the extractor, it's going to push it to a column, and it's going to define what kind of data it is. So for example, let's say I want to get a piece of information out of an SOW. I want to get the discount percentage out of it. You can see this is, see how it's got this label option? I don't know why it wasn't popping up in my other one, but when you can select what piece of information you want out of the document, and it'll tell you, okay, here's where we're going to grab it. And then we can train it to grab that piece of information based on what's around it. So for example, for this 5%, I've labeled the information I want. I've then defined that this piece of information is in between A and a percentage sign. So in between A and percentage sign is the information that I want. I've labeled it inside the document. And then what's going to happen is it's going to say, okay, based on what you're looking for, what you've defined as the information around it, we think that this is what the information is going to be that we're going to extract. And it'll show up right here. And then that's what eventually gets pulled into the column in the list or library, is this prediction information. And then when we go to do it, we can test it. And you can see that it's going to go through my sample documents and it's going to say, okay, yes, I did find this piece of information where the A and the percentage are around it. I grabbed the value and I put it in here. Because these are SOWs, these have no label because they don't meet the criteria for the extractor. So if I click on this SOW, there's no label because there's no mark that we're trying to look for. It's not going to meet the guidelines of the extractors. So essentially what's happening is you're creating a machine learning model to go in, define what kind of information it is, train it to find what you want, and then pick the items out of it that you want to get out of it. So as you can imagine, the documents that you want to put in here need to have some level of consistency and formatting. They're going to be digitally generated. It's a lot easier if everything's like, you know, really organized on the page. And what you're going to see here is like it took all the formatting out and then ran it all together. So what we're looking for is what is the same between every single document or every single item so that we can get that information out of it. The best thing in here is going to be Microsoft formatted items. So Word docs work really well because they follow Microsoft formatting and you can find the information in them. When you're all done, what's going to happen is then you can take that model and you can apply this to create a list or library, and then every single item that's in that library that matches that model that you have defined will run against it and will grab that information out. And then you can see that the models here have been stored in this library. All right, let me see where I'm at on my list. All right, so that's the SharePoint piece. I know this is kind of quick. This is the SharePoint piece. The other half is in Power Platform. So the other half of this, the first half is in SharePoint. The second half is in Power Platform with SharePoint Syntex working with AI Builder. And so you can see under AI Builder, I can also have these same models. The difference is in, oops, sorry, I have to get in the right place. The difference is in SharePoint, in the libraries, it's going to be Word docs, whereas in the AI Builder, I can now use PDFs as well. Once it loads. Oh, whoops. This one expired. Hang on, let me go to my other one. There we go. Okay, so you can actually build an AI model based on SharePoint Syntex in here. And okay, there we go. And very similar to what I just showed you in the SharePoint library. We can go in here and we can do something very similar, and it's called form processing. And basically what will happen is we're going to do the exact same thing as what we did in our SharePoint Syntex on the SharePoint side. And we're going to say, maybe we want to do a benefits, we want to do HR benefits documents, and see how it's going to say the same thing, 5+ documents with the same layout. We're going to pick what information we want to get out of this document. So this kind of matches up with the extractors on the SharePoint Syntex side. So maybe, for example, we want to get, I think there was a percentage in those documents. That's what we were looking at. We want to get maybe name, maybe we want to get date, right? Pick whatever you want. And it's going to create fields for those. So this is exactly like we created those extractors in SharePoint Syntex. We've got the fields. And then we're going to do the same thing for columns. Is we use those fields for the columns. And now it's going to say, okay, now create a collection of documents that are going to be very similar. And I've got these set up for this. Oops. Got my fake documents. I think that's right. Okay. It's going to pull them all in, upload them, and then it's going to use these to train the model to say, okay, this is what it's like. And then down here at the bottom, there's this analyze button to be able to analyze it. I'll show you what happens out of that. And very similar to what we're doing in SharePoint Syntex. It's going to basically grab the layout. So think about it in terms of we've got the structure, we've got the layout, it's going to map that out, and it's going to use AI to basically grab information out of those documents and then put them somewhere else. So the question is, does this work with PDFs or just Word docs? So Word docs work really well in the SharePoint library, in the SharePoint models, in the libraries, and in Power Apps, that's where we want to use the PDFs. So any image-based type document is going to be in here, but it's PDFs is what's supported, and then Word docs are in the SharePoint library. I know it's a little confusing that there's kind of two different places. Kind of depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So see how it's going to take a snapshot of that whole thing. It's going to identify where things are on a page. Okay, now we've got all these in here. And we're trying to get something out of it. So now we want to get the information out of those documents. And this is really similar to what we did in SharePoint. We defined what it was that we wanted to get. You can see up here, here's my documents if I want to look through them. Make sure I've got the right things. It's being slow, sorry guys. I can look through my invoices, make sure those are the right things. And then now I want to decide which fields on these matter. And so for example, you know, this is a date field. Oops. And so I want to grab, there's the date. And see how it says, okay, there's date. This is a date field. And it's going to map the information in this section to this field. And maybe I want to get the bill to name. That's name. And I could use this for percentage, but maybe this isn't relevant to this information. So I can say no. There's no percentage in any of these, so just ignore it. All right. And I'm basically going to do that for each of these. And for the most part, it'll start picking up what to do really easily. It already knew what date was. See, it got date that time again. It doesn't seem like it's too excited about getting the name, but we're going to give it to it anyways. Still hasn't figured it out. Usually by then it's figured out kind of which ones are which. And now I'm going to use that information to train the model. So see how these, all we're doing is creating a model for machine learning to basically say, here's the information we want, here's how it's laid out, here's the pieces of information that we want to get out of those. And then now, just like we had over here, it's creating this classifier model. It's also creating a classifier model in the AI builder side that we can then apply. All right. And still spinning. It's coming. So see over here, it says training. I know it's really small and it's the little thing is spinning. Let's see if I can blow this up a little bit. I don't like it because you can't see the whole thing. There we go. See that it's training that model and it's getting it set up for us. There we go. Now that model is trained and I can click on it and I can go look at it. And let's say, for example, I want to publish this somewhere. I can publish it as an actual model, or maybe I want to test it first. And say, okay, I'm going to test this against something. And I've got this test document I can use. And it's going to run it against it and say, okay, based on the model you created, it's going to identify this is the term date, this is the term name. And so we know it's doing what we want it to do. So anytime we put a document that's identical to this, it's going to grab the information from here and mark it as date, put it in that field. It's going to grab this information, put it in name, and we're good to go. And now I've published the model. And so if I want to use this on the Power Platform side, I can now use this particular model as part of either a Power App or a Power Automate flow to apply that model to documents in a SharePoint library. Pull this up again. All right, I know, high level overview, lots of information, no specific use cases other than just these basic ones. What questions do you guys have? It's brand new. I'm pretty excited about it because if you think about kind of what you're capable of doing with this, it's going to get really exciting really fast. Question. So if using PDFs, then Power Apps, and if docs, then Syntex. Yeah, so it's all actually part of SharePoint Syntex. But yes, if you're using PDFs, you need to use it in the AI builder in the Power App side or Power Platform side. And if you're using docs, then you're going to want to do it directly in the content center that's in SharePoint. For right now. That is, I'm looking, I have a list of what's supported, but I don't see it. But yes, the right answer is Word docs in the SharePoint Content Center and PDFs in the Power Platform AI Builder piece. One of the things that I like is that it tells you what your accuracy level is. So much like in our Power Platform, when we did this, it showed us how confident it was. I remember only one of them was 98%, one of them was 100. It does the same thing over here. So if I'm trying to get a piece of information out, it'll tell me based on all of its testing. Oops, go back to the model. What the accuracy score of it being able to do that is. So it's basically all the sample files that you put in there as it trains. It will learn from what that is, and it will be able to give you a confidence score of how often it's able to get the right information. What other questions do you guys have about this? Everybody's being really quiet. It's just a lot new. I just wanted to give you guys kind of a quick overview. I know it's brand new. I know it's just out there. Is there any information on roadmap for additional features? Yeah, I would definitely go to that SharePoint Syntex link, that AKMS SharePoint Syntex. As there are pieces of information that come out, they'll be out here. It's also on the roadmap. Joel said Excel files cannot be used. Is this true? I would stick with Word docs at the moment. Mostly because Excel files are they have a different underlying application, and it's right now they're not formatted the same way. So as far as I know, they will not work. as of yet. The other thing is you can look at the Microsoft roadmap and you will be able to find information about this eventually. But for right now, I would just say go to the SharePoint Syntex page, get more information about it. Let's look and see. On the roadmap yet. So if you guys don't know, you can just go to this roadmap, which I'm going to put in the link. So Amber asked, do you know if there does any OCR of the files to get them into the system? So my understanding is in the new SharePoint Online SharePoint libraries, it does, as part of SharePoint Syntex, it will try to OCR files. It's not as clean, it's not dependable, things get a little messy, but it does try to OCR files before it maps them. I still recommend that you use Word docs if possible for right now, but technically, yes, it will try to OCR the files. So I'm going to search down here for SharePoint Syntex. Yep, there we go. So if you go to the Microsoft 365 roadmap, you can see this is as far as we've gotten. General availability is out there. There's nothing else on the roadmap right now, but as this year progresses, there will be more things on the roadmap to add more features and functionality to the tool itself. So you can continue to find information about that and other applications on the general Microsoft 365 roadmap. So question, what happens if you do all this and someone replaces or changes the Word document? Does it auto run based on a flow to update and overwrite the info? So that's a really good question. So it's not about the Word document. This is training a model. And then these models are going to be applied to a library. So if you think about it, it's a content type, right? So if I take a content type and I apply it to a library, it adds the right fields and it does the right things. So if someone replaced a Word document, it wouldn't make any difference because you've already trained the model. So this, now I would say if you go in here and you retrain the model, then it will change your model, but it's a content type. Underneath it's content types underneath it, so it wouldn't be as easy as somebody just simply replacing a Word doc to cause a problem. They would have to actually go into the model itself. They would have to go into the classifier. They would have to retrain it or change these classifications for it to ever get to that point. So I don't want you to worry about if somebody just goes in and adds a Word doc that it's going to blow the whole thing up. This is training it, and then you're using that model to apply to a library to continue to get the same information out of similar type documents. Yeah, so Jim, the question Jim has is, it sounds like PDF and Word docs need to be in a repeatable format to train the model. Yes. So remember, guys, this is very, very early, very beginnings. Yes, they need to be essentially identical documents. So if you look at the ones that I was pulling up in the Power Apps, in here, you're going to want to use things that are all going to look exactly the same. Let's see if I can do a... I don't have my preview on here. There we go. So notice how each of these, even though they're formatted, everything's in the exact same place, no matter what. So, or invoices, where everything, whoops, accidentally clicked on it. But yes, you want to have documents that are essentially going to have the exact same format. Everything's going to be in the same place. Everything's going to have something consistent. The difference is on the PDFs, it's about where it's at on the page. And in the content center, you can do a little bit more advanced things. So when we go into train the model, we can do this thing where, whoops, not in the model. Wait, hang on, I want to go back. In the extractors is where you actually care about it. So in the extractors, you can get a little bit deeper and you can say, I want something that is between this and this. It's not where it's at on the page only. It's just, you can actually define phrasing, you can define patterns, you can say where it's at on the page also, but it's not going to be limited to just mapping it on a page. It's also going to have other predictive type of things around it. So precursors, postcursors, where it's at on the page, if it has something specific around it. So it's a little bit more specific in the SharePoint side than it is on the Power App side. Yes, Jonathan, it's best for form letters, invoices, SOWs, things that have something that is consistent and predictive in nature. But I mean, the truth of the matter is that's the biggest problem we're trying to solve first, right? So if people have form letters that are going out, they have base invoices, base SOWs, whatever it is that's got a consistent pattern, those are the ones that we don't really want to have to go look for information in. Those are the ones that we can say, hey, go grab this information out. And so think about it in terms of when we're creating our libraries, and let's say you create a library of contracts. Now, currently, and I've worked with clients to have to do this, you would have to go into each of those contracts, right? And for every field, you would have to say, you know, who was the contract for, when was the contract written, maybe specific information about the contract, right? We would create fields or columns that would actually have information about that contract, and we would have to manually enter that in. What this does is it then goes into that contract and says, if they're all the same and they're all written the same, what was the date? Who was it for? What was it about? And I can define where in the document to find that information, and I can autofill all of the metadata. And if I have 1,000 or 2,000 or 10,000 contracts, I don't have to manually have somebody go in and do that. I can literally go in, define what that model is for that particular document, grab the piece of information I'm looking for, and then put it in a column. So I've got 10,000 contracts and I want the original date off of all of them. I've got 10,000 contracts and I want to know, you know, who the person is that's on the contract, what business the contract is with, whatever. I can now grab those specific pieces of information through either the content model in SharePoint or the form builder in Power Apps, and I can grab that piece of information and I can load it all into there. And so now for 10,000 contracts, I did not have to manually do that. I have a model that will run and do that for me. So this is really using machine learning and a little bit of AI to kind of make our lives easier. What other questions do you guys have? Here's the details for the model in AI Builder. Here's the fields where, so you can see how this kind of, I want to pull this up because I want you guys to see, these are kind of the two different things. So we've got our model, go into my model, I've got my sample files, my training, my extractors, and it's the same thing over here. I've got, this is my model, my training document. These are my extractors, my selected fields. And then if I'm using my model, this is where it's being used. And so it's very, very similar, just a matter of what you're doing and where you're doing it. Well, thanks for hanging in there with me, guys. This is the first time that I've kind of walked through this other than the workshop. So Not gonna lie, a little nervous because it's all brand new technology and it's still all coming together, but I'm really excited about it. It's the first thing in a while that SharePoint is really pushing out that's new. It's exciting. From a content management perspective, from a knowledge management perspective, I know a lot of people are really excited about not having to manually enter metadata going forward. So I just wanted to kind of give you guys an early look at what's going on with SharePoint Syntex, what it's capable of, what you can do with it. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. Make sure to follow, keep up on the roadmap, check out the Syntex page, check out the Project Cortex page if you'd like to look at some of the calls and see what's going on. And once again, if you guys would like to participate in those workshops, we're going to have a lot more time to sit down with you guys and answer questions and walk through specific use cases and train models and practice with all of this. And we'll also provide you guys with environments to be able to practice with. So make sure to fill that form out if you guys are interested in joining any of those as well. Other than that, I'll stick around and answer questions until about 1. But I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day and welcome to 2021.